Want me to be this way? And then I'll...
Yeah, there you go.
Back in action. Yeah, race week nutrition is really important too. Up until now, really, that's one of the big lessons in Mont Tremblant. Even with the dietary changes I made, I still didn't understand, even prior to the dietary changes, how significant race week nutrition is. I didn't, until I read a literature review on carbohydrate, I didn't really realize that carbo loading and things are real things. Like, I always just thought they were just kind of cute little words that people say, like, oh, you're gonna go to the pasta party? And it turns out, actually, carbo loading is a real thing, especially if you constantly are training hard, and then you go through some sort of super compensation phase in 2 or 3 days after ending that hard training, especially if you keep the carbohydrate intake up high. So that's definitely something that I learned that I didn't even know. As well, you know, waking up in the morning, I didn't really know the significance of eating a really big breakfast, because I've never been a big, huge breakfast person. So, I mean, if you wake up and you have a small little breakfast, say you wake up at 4 a.m., race goes at 7 a.m., that's 3 hours. I mean, if you're not eating too much in between then, you're really turning, let's say an Ironman takes 8 hours, you're really turning that Ironman into an 11-hour event if you're not putting much into the system from 4 until 7 a.m., which is something I definitely done in the past. You know, I've also seen people eating gels and stuff on the way, you know, putting the bike in the morning and getting through body marking and all that stuff. And I didn't really understand the significance of that. But for the most part, you're just trying to get, even if you can, past the gun without starting to tap into your energy stores. And I mean, your blood will constantly have a fairly constant amount of glucose in it to power your brain and vital organs and things. And so, you know, if you're not eating anything, well, that's coming from your stores, mainly your liver stores at that time. So if you're eating a gel, it's going straight into the bloodstream and going to those basic functions and the walking around you're doing in the morning. And I didn't really appreciate that or understand that until this race in Mont Tremblant. So that's one thing in and of itself. And another big thing too, I would say, is you know, admittedly, I was afraid to gain weight, especially the couple days leading into the race. But that's all going to help you. I mean, at the end of the day, that's going to mainly be water weight and carbohydrate stores. That's all helping you. That's not deteriorating your performance. So this is all just ignorance that I had. I didn't appreciate that Mont Tremblant showed me. 2 nights before, you got to eat things that you enjoy eating and enjoy eating a lot of. And so for me, 2 nights before, I'm going to eat pizza. I enjoy it. It's got a lot of protein, carbohydrate, fat, sodium. You know, you put some vegetables on it. It's got some micronutrients, and I can eat a ton of it. So that's one thing. And then it makes you really thirsty too. So then you start drinking a whole bunch of water too. So that's the big meal for 2 nights out. And then of course throughout the day before, you're, you know, eating lots of breads and that sort of thing. For lunch today, for instance, I had Mr. Noodle soup. And then for dinner, I've been having this. This has been a pre-race ritual for a while now, having a homemade pasta sauce on obviously a bunch of pasta with garlic bread. So, I mean, that's all things that I can eat a ton of. Very high in carbohydrates, fats, sodium. Perfect pre-race meal. Perfect to super compensate. Then the morning of the race, I discovered this actually last year in Kona. Because you do have to eat things that are, you know, that you can stomach. In the morning, I'm not a big breakfast person, so I discovered eating 2 Mr. Noodle soups in the morning and drinking the broth. And once again, it's got everything you need, and it makes you thirsty, so you also want to drink, you know, half a liter of water with it too, and you just retain all that fluid. And it's all good, because the reality is, I mean, immediately when that gun goes, sweating's on, carbohydrate consumption's on, and you're just going to burn right through all that stuff. So that weight you're going to shed very, very quickly. It's not of any relevance to try and cut that weight out or not put it on or something. It's only going to help you. 30 minutes before, I mean, I would say probably an hour and a half before I'll have a gel, and then also 30 minutes before I'll have another gel, just to keep the constant supply of carbohydrate into the bloodstream, keep my liver glycogen untapped. And then basically we get in, once that gun goes, obviously you can't consume anything in the swim, so that's an hour. that you'll be relying on whatever was left of breakfast and those couple of gels. So you will probably by the end of that swim, well certainly by the end of the swim you'll be tapping into the stores. But the moment you come out of that water, time to execute, hopefully execute the well thought out race day nutrition plan that you have concocted. Well, basically, I mean, this has been a work in progress, and Kona, I just took a shot in the dark. Mont Tremblant, for whatever reason, I just did nothing for the most part. So now I'll have a lot of motivation and a lot of knowledge due to the humbling effect of defeat. And basically the process that I've gone through is, first off, I've done a ton of sweat rate testing. In Kona conditions, we concluded in running, my sweat rate's approximately 2.6 liters per hour. And in biking, my sweat rate's approximately 2.3 liters per hour. That's, I should mention, at peak heat, I guess you would say. So that's an upper limit, hopefully, for sweat rate. Each liter of sweat contains approximately 1,000 milligrams of sodium, and that's the real big one. That's the one that you're going to lose a lot of. And so basically, from there, knowing that stuff, you can work backwards. And let's say I weigh in, and I intend to weigh in probably a little bit more race morning, but currently I'd probably weigh in at about 160 pounds. And for me, just through years now of exercise and training and knowing my body, for me, and especially in Kona conditions, a realistic loss, let's say, is about 7%. That's what I'm aiming for. By the moment I cross that finish line, I'm going to be around 7% dehydrated. If I'm 8 to 10%, I'm going to be probably passed out 10 kilometers before the finish line. But if I can get to that finish line at 7%, then that's probably the best I can do with the body I've been given and the work required of me. So basically that is 11.2 pounds of my body weight, which translates to 5.1 liters I have to work with in terms of what I can lose out there on the course. So you know this now, and you know your running sweat rate, because you have to start with the run, because the run is always going to be the limiting factor due to the running motion, the up and down, the gastrointestinal discomfort. And so for me, all through testing, I've come to the conclusion that a fairly attainable drinking rate is 1.5 liters per hour. So you do the math on that. I'm sweating at a peak rate of 2.6 liters, and I'm consuming 1.5 liters. That gives me a deficit of 1.1 liters per hour on the run. Let's say you run a 2:45 marathon, because for me, 2:45, you better damn well run a 2:45 if you want to win the race. So that's 2.75 hours. Over the course of 2.75 hours, a 1.1 liter sweat rate, by the end of that run, you would have lost 3.03 liters. So now you take that away from me, from my 5.1 liters, and now I have another 2.1 liters basically to work with on the bike. And so, as I said previously, my sweat rate on the bike peak, of course, is 2.3 liters per hour. So most of the bike, it's going to be less than that, which is good. And also I found the maximum I can consume while riding a bike is approximately 1.68 liters per hour. So you do the math on that, 2.3 liters minus 1.68 liters is a deficit of 0.62 liters per hour. You multiply that, if you want to win a race, you could better be riding in 4 hours and 15 minutes. So you multiply that by 4.25, it gives you a deficit of 2.64 liters over the course of the entire bike. You add your bike deficit to your run deficit, and that gets me at 5.67 liter deficit upon crossing the finish line. Keep in mind, we're using peak sweat rates, so theoretically it should be lower than that by the time, and that's good because that adds up to 12.47 pounds lost, which turns out to be 7.8% of my body weight. So that's a little bit higher than my goal, but because we're using peak sweat rates, I should really come in closer to 7%. And so basically that's that. That's how I guess calculate the quantity of consumption, the next piece of the puzzle is, well, what the heck am I going to consume? Fortunately, Gatorade Endurance, which is what's on course, especially in American races, and the big one, Kona, is an American race, the formula is actually very, very close to the average sweat rate. So per liter of Gatorade Endurance, you will consume 850 milligrams of sodium. I'm sweating per liter at 1,000 milligrams of sodium. Therefore, really, I'm pretty darn close. As long as I just drink straight up Gatorade Endurance the whole way, I'm pretty darn close to replenishing what I need. I will on the bike take a little bit extra because every 2 hours, basically, I'm in a 300 milligram deficit. So another 600 milligrams of sodium. But for the most part, basically, that's what I will do. So in order to achieve these numbers, then you can work backwards again. In order to achieve that 1.68 liters per hour of consumption, that works out to actually consuming one of the on-course bottles every 25 minutes. And so that's my goal for the bike, is to consume, basically I'll have one bottle in the front. I'll drink that in 25 minutes. I'll go through the first aid station around 10 miles, pick up another bottle, and basically every single aid station for the next 9 aid stations, I will take another bottle and I'll drink them every 25 minutes. And it just so happens that I'm going through aid stations approximately every 25 minutes. So that's the bike. And then to achieve my 1.5 liters per hour on the run, there's many ways to go about it, but in Kona, that's what I'll discuss now, there's the pro aid stations, which makes that race very different than any other race. You certainly could do it utilizing each aid station every mile, but making things easier on myself, I will utilize the pro aid stations. And so basically, I'll wear a real bottle holder. I'll use the smallest bottle I can find that's over 500 mils because I need to consume 500 mils. So let's say I can find a 500 milliliter bottle, and I'll just have that concentrated with regular Gatorade Endurance, maybe a little bit extra sodium just to get up to that little bit extra that I need, the 150 milligrams per liter extra. But otherwise, that's going to fulfill all the electrolyte needs and all of the carbohydrate needs. And there's one of those aid stations every 5K, basically. So I'll be consuming one of those bottles approximately every 20 minutes, which gets me through 1 hour, and I'll have consumed 1.5 liters, and we just go through the whole run consuming in this way. So maybe it seems a little complicated, but it's really not that complicated. It's just a matter of thinking about it beforehand and then sticking to it and executing it on race day. And so that's really the challenge, is sticking to your plan.
That is liquids all day. Your stomach probably can't handle that. It's just going to be squashing around. Why wouldn't you do like chews or gels or some solids to mix that up? Why are you going to do that stress to your stomach?
Yeah. Once again, it's all just things I've learned over the years. Liquids for me have worked very well. I've always heard these stories of hunger and things in races. I've never experienced hunger in a race. Usually there's so little blood flow going to my brain that I have very little sensation other than screaming in my quadriceps and glutes. So for me it works. I prefer it, and I love Gatorade. I drink it on a daily basis. I drink it throughout the day. I really enjoy the product. It's not something, in fact, the real testament to whether or not you truly like a product is, after Mont Tremblant, for instance, I was still drinking Gatorade after the race because I enjoyed the drink. So once again, these are things that you should test in practice. So if you need to incorporate some solids for whatever reason, I mean, that's all fine and dandy. For me, I just get everything I need. I don't need any more calories. In fact, I'm almost too many calories on the bike. This equates to drinking 3 liters every 75 minutes. 3 bottles every 75 minutes equates to 432 calories an hour consumed. So that's like the upper limit of absorption in terms of carbohydrate. So the beauty of the bike is that you're not sloshing around and that sort of thing, and you probably can sort of super compensate, I guess, in a sense, because you know when you get onto the run, you're certainly not going to be able to drink as much fluid or get as many calories in due to what you said, the sloshing. So it's better to, I guess, get ahead of the game on the bike because you know you're going to fall behind on the run.
So why can't you just not drink so much liquids on the run and take like chews and dilute it with water, or take a gel and dilute it with water?
Well, you're still going to have to drink a massive quantity of liquid. For me, I am sweating so much. 1.5 liters to, if you ask the vast majority of people if it's possible to drink 1.5 liters per hour while running approximately 355 or 615 per mile, most people would say that's impossible and you're going to be vomiting on the side of the road. Well, I mean, I've tested, I've done it, and for me, that's like the safe point. I've done more. I've done 2 liters an hour while running, and that's starting to get pretty disgusting, for lack of a better term, in my gut. But 1.5 is kind of a safe spot, and so for me, it's not a big problem. I believe if you're able to produce a large amount of power and you have a really high sweat rate, then you're probably also gifted with an ability to drink a very large quantity of fluid while exercising.
Like salt pills and salt, and I know Goo has some like Roctane gels. Why wouldn't you capitalize on like the BCAAs and the amino acids and all that in the race and the science done? Why are you doing it all yourself?
I mean, for the most part, really, what are we talking about? We're talking about doing an ultra endurance event that takes 8 hours, that very carnal, very submaximal. For the most part, it's about who's mentally toughest. But in order to win that battle, a mental toughness battle, you've got to provide the basic building blocks. And what is the basic building blocks? It's very simple. It doesn't need to be complicated. Carbohydrates allow the muscles to fire. Sodium and potassium allow the muscles to fire. And fluid allows you to cool yourself, as well as other cellular processes. That's it. I mean, those are the limiting factors. So you don't need to introduce all of these other things. I'm consuming so much quantity that introducing even a little bit more just adds a little bit more risk of gastrointestinal stress and these sorts of things. At the end of the day, keep pace with your sweat rate decently well and provide a fluid that is very close to your sweat and provide adequate carbohydrate, and that is your best bet to get to the finish line as fast as you can.
If you're so intelligent on all this and you know what you're doing, then why haven't you done a perfect race so far with perfect nutrition?
Well, first and foremost, my first real learning experience was Kona, 2017. So that's where I executed a decent nutrition plan. I did a pretty good job, but I missed one component. I consumed approximately 40% of the fluid as pure water. And that's almost as dangerous as consuming nothing at all, because you're just diluting the system in that. And so, yeah, most of that water is going to pass through, but some of it's going to be retained. And if you don't give adequate electrolyte, well, where do you think that electrolyte is going to come from? Because the body always strives to maintain homeostasis. Well, it's going to take it from places that it don't really need to be functioning right now to the level that they're functioning. And that would be your quadriceps, your hamstrings, your glutes, your calves, all the things that we rely upon. So that was my first, I guess, foray into, true, really good, striving to have a really good race plan. And then Arizona, the next race I did, I went into that thing knowing that I was tired and blah, 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 and I was just gonna execute something decent and not really strive to be perfect. And then here we go, back on the old topic of what the hell happened in Mont Tremblant. The reality is I just was arrogant and sloppy, and I literally just didn't give it any thought. I just went into it and said, I'm in great shape, I'm not worried about it, I'll just drink some Gatorade that's on course, don't worry about electrolytes, don't worry about carbohydrate consumption, don't worry about carb loading, I'm in great shape, don't worry about it. That's arrogance. You get what you deserve when you walk into a strenuous event like an Ironman with arrogance. So, I think I understand how to train pretty well, how to rest pretty well, how to race pretty well. This really is the final frontier for me.
So you think you got it down for Kona?
That would be arrogant to say such a thing, that I've got it down, that I know all the answers. The answer is I won't know until hour 7 in Kona if I got it down. I certainly am on the trail to getting it down, without a doubt. It's really just going to come down to, are my consumption rates a little overzealous, or are they truly within my capacity to consume at that level? And that's really the only question mark for me.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I mean, a big piece of the puzzle in all this stuff is definitely to measure and monitor and test. And we've done quite a few workouts now. We did one workout where I consumed 700 milliliters on the run every 25 minutes. So I've done that. That's 2.1 liters. So what I intend to do on the bike, I've done it on the run. So that's how I know that I should be able to achieve the 1.5 liter per hour consumption, because I've already done it in a 30K run after biking 2 hours in lesser conditions in Kona. So my sweat rate would probably have been lower. Admittedly, you know, I'm getting a little bit uncomfortable at that rate, so that's why we back it off a little bit. But how would I know this if I didn't test it in practice? So that's the big thing, is to be working on this stuff in practice, because once again, you can be in the best shape of your entire life, and if you don't have a decent handle on this stuff, you will be reduced to a, let's call it 70%, I guess, person of your true self. And I don't think the disappointment could be any worse when you show up to a race in great shape and underperform to 70-75% of your capacity. Nothing stings more. I would just like to issue a formal apology for the length of this video. Sometimes you got to do things for yourself, and this video really is for myself. I hope you take something from it, and I hope you made it this far, because I think I've learned quite a bit. I've got quite a bit of experience over the last 8 years of racing. But the reality is, in Mont Tremblant, I wish I had this video so that I could have watched it 1 week before and reminded myself of all of these lessons. So here it is. From now on, this video at least will go up one view 1 week before every single Ironman that I do, because I'm going to watch it and remind myself of all these lessons. So sorry, not sorry.